Rivers are naturally flowing watercourses usually containing fresh water. Just like other water bodies, rivers are also home to mind-boggling creatures and mysteries. If you ever try searching the bottom of a river, there's a good chance you will find some unbelievable things down there. And a few lucky people actually did manage to find strange and terrifying things in the riverbeds. These discoveries were baffling to say the least. And today we're going to tell you all about the shocking things found in the depths of rivers around the world. Planes. The part of the plane where the passengers and crew sit during a flight is called the fuselage. It doesn't include the plane's wing as they are considered a separate component. A fuselage can't be moved by flight unless a much larger aircraft carries it. That is pretty expensive. That's why aircraft manufacturers have these carried to their construction warehouses by train, and the wings along with the rest of the components are added here. Trains have been used for fuselage transport for over a century now, but that doesn't mean they're not prone to accidents. A Montana rail link driver was supposed to transport 6 Boeing 737 fuselages from Montana to a factory in Washington. However, before the train could get out of Montana, the unfortunate driver ended up derailing the train just over the Clark Fork River. The driver escaped the wreck uninjured, but around half of the fuselages came undone and fell into the river. These terribly damaged fuselages were later discovered submerged in the Clark Fork River. 2 of these were entirely underwater. Montana Rail Link then had to find a way to recover these fuselages from the river. They had a hard time taking these out. After all, it was the first time something like this happened. It took the company 5 days to remove 3 fuselages. They weren't in salvageable condition and therefore had to be crushed and cubed by a Montana-based recycling firm. Shigear Idol. No one really ever pays attention to a piece of wood floating in a swamp, but sometimes that piece of wood turns out to be an ancient relic. The Shigear Idol is a piece of wood that has been carved like a totem pole with human faces in it. At first glance, it looks really strange and somewhat scary because of the eerie faces. However, the frightening features of the faces aren't intentional. The discovery of this Shigear Idol is no less than a miracle. This seemingly ordinary 9-foot-tall totem pole is actually the oldest wooden sculpture known to humanity. The fact that it has remained absolutely preserved for this long is baffling. It is the only surviving artifact dating back to the Stone Age. It was discovered by some gold miners on January 24, 1890 in a peat bog. It was hiding nearly 13 feet below the surface in the bog of Shigar located in Russia. Its age was estimated using radiocarbon dating in 1997, and it was found to be around 9,500 years old. However, accelerator mass spectrometry conducted later revealed that the idol was nearly 11,500 years old. Experts who have studied the carvings in the idol think that these represent a distinct form of art, probably associated with spiritual or religious activities. It's surprising to know that humans during the Stone Age somehow created an idol like this. It was most likely created using a 159-year-old tree. They used stone tools to carve the faces in the wood. Even today, the true purpose of this idol isn't known, but some experts have speculated that it was used as a warning sign to keep people from entering a prohibited or dangerous area. A tank. The T-3476 you see is a medium-sized tank that began service back in 1941. The tank is famous for being deployed alongside the Red Army in the Second World War. Over the coming decades, around 80,000 of these tanks were produced by the Soviet Union and the communist allies like China, Cuba, and North Korea. This footage of a T-3476 being dragged out of the Don River is no less than watching history unravel. They probably had to bring extremely powerful machinery to drag it out. This tank has been buried in the water for more than 50 years when it was taken out in 2016. The locals believe that the tank was sunk by the Soviet troops to ensure that it didn't end up in enemy hands. But another theory states that it just fell in the river while moving along a pontoon bridge. It was probably lost in the summer of 1942. The relatively wider tracks of this tank model were designed particularly for dealing with brutal winters and harsh terrains with mud and snow covering most of the ground. It was no less than a beast, but there was one problem. These tanks were prone to sinking in the snow, and that's exactly why this tank remained hidden in this cold, muddy swamp for half a century. It was immersed in nearly 12 feet of water and had sunk another 6 feet into the mud. It took volunteers from the local diving club about 2 weeks to wash the silt and mud from the tank. Afterwards, it was pulled to the ground and taken to the War Museum for display. It was still intact and functional, as the people who salvaged it managed to start the diesel engine quite easily. Well, that proves one thing: the Soviets were pretty good at manufacturing durable and dependable war machinery. Ancient Egyptian portico. Back in 2007, a team of Egyptian archaeologists began the first ever underwater excavation of the Nile River. They were hoping to unearth ancient Egyptian antiquities, shipwrecks, and treasures from the riverbed. They surveyed the dense, muddy waters of the Nile for weeks. It wasn't an easy task. They had to use specific gear, including a side-scan sonar and a GPS, to spot artifacts buried under the mud. Their efforts weren't futile, however, as they discovered an underwater portico. A portico is a covered entryway, and this one led to an ancient Egyptian temple. A 2008 National Geographic report revealed that this entryway led to the temple of Khnum, the ram-headed fertility god. The team of archaeologists found this portico in Aswan. The portico itself was too massive to be removed, but archaeologists did manage to retrieve a stone weighing 1 ton from the river. The stone had inscriptions dating back anywhere from 945 to 525 BCE. Experts think the stone could be even older than the inscriptions. The archaeologists also found remnants of an ancient Christian church during these dives. Radioactive river. This river, named Techa, is located in Russia and is devoid of any kind of frightening creatures. Don't get too cozy though, because this entire river is filled with radioactive waste material. Between 1949 and 1956, a nuclear facility in Russia accidentally dumped harmful radioactive waste in the Techa River, and then afterwards they intentionally dumped the waste here. Soon enough, the beautiful and pristine river was transformed into one of the world's most toxic and hazardous dumping sites. The area around the river housed about 28,000 people before it was polluted by the nuclear waste. Most of these people relied on the Techa River for their water supply, so after contamination, they had no choice but to evacuate. Several of the locals were exposed to extremely high doses of radiation, even more than the amount the Chernobyl disaster victims were exposed to. Even today, the locals are paying the price of the ignorant actions of the nuclear facility. The fate of this river tells us a tragic story of how our actions are adversely affecting nature. The Egtved Girl. There's always a chance that a piece of wood lying in the depths of a bog came from an ancient tree that existed thousands of years ago. But this piece of wood you see wasn't found alone. The remains of this iconic Bronze Age girl were also discovered along with this piece of wood. This girl is now called the Egtved Girl. She was named after the village her body was found in. Experts believe she was buried at least 3,400 years ago, but the bog has managed to preserve her hair, clothing, nails, and even some of her teeth. The piece of wood initially discovered in the bog was a makeshift coffin carrying the body of the Egtved Girl inside it. She was found buried in a large mound of peat. The teenager was between 16 and 18 years old at the time of her death. The clothes she was wearing were commended by many researchers. They think she was a stylish young woman. She was wearing a wool skirt with a huge bronze disc belt, having a few spirals on it. Judging from her clothing, experts have deduced that she wasn't an ordinary girl during her life. She may have been a priestess of a cult. The discovery of the girl's body may have shocked the scientists, but her fashion sense inspired the ladies, and they even tried imitating her outfit. What's strange about her is that she most likely hails from an area close to the Black Forest in Germany, but her body was found in Denmark. Scientists have analyzed the atoms of her skirt and concluded that she was a traveler who probably died in a foreign land. The Sinking Mansion. Tourists are often astonished to see a huge house half submerged in the water of the River Loire. Whose house is it? Did someone live here before it went underwater? These and many other questions arise in people's mind when they witness this strange building for the first time. It looks like it will topple over any moment as the entire structure is tilting one way. However, no need to worry, as this is just a replica of an inn that was previously located in the nearby town of La Vue-sur-Loire. The mansion is called La Maison dans la Loire. The building was created by a French artist as an art exhibit to be featured in the Estuary Art Exhibition in 2007. It wasn't the artist's intention to place the house in this awkward position, but the water took the building along and half of the structure became submerged. The sinking house ended up in the middle of the river as a consequence. The windows of this house are open and make it look like a house that was swept away by a flood. Alligator or a rock? A bone-chilling video was shared recently by a Florida canoe company. In the caption they wrote, "That moment when you realize your canoe was stuck on an alligator's back." The people in the canoe must have been really brave, because an ordinary person definitely would not have the courage to film a frightening alligator they run into. The clip was shot by a see-through boat rental company. The massive and ferocious predator can be seen wedged beneath the clear bottom canoe. At first glance, the boater just thought he was stuck on a muddy, jagged rock, but he was in for a surprise because the hard, grisly thing his boat was perched on was a huge alligator. The creature was trying to swim up to the surface, and it probably didn't realize the clear bottom of the boat was above until it was too late. It is only a far-fetched dream to live in Florida close to a freshwater body and not come across such menacing beasts. Alligators are part of the natural order in this state, and you will see them in almost all of Florida's lakes, rivers, and streams. The authorities have tried their best to keep certain water bodies gator-free, but that never lasts, and sooner or later, the alligators just appear in the water. The boater who ended up face-to-face with this huge alligator hasn't explained how he got in this situation. However, in a comment, he did say that the gator slowly backed away after a while and let him pass. Bronze Age axe. The man you see in the video is one of the only two people to have held this incredible Bronze Age axe in almost 3,000 years. This astonishing artifact is an important historic discovery and was found by a relic hunter. He specializes in shallow water river hunting. He probably had no idea he was about to find archaeological gold that day. The ancient axe was found by the crew in the mighty River Forth that lies in the shadow of Stirling Castle, Scotland. The team was hoping to find the relics of Scotland's greatest medieval warriors in the riverbed. They wanted to find out everything they could about the battles these warriors fought against the English overlords, whom they hated with great passion. Instead, they came across artifacts that were much older than they had anticipated. The Bronze Age axe head was one of these artifacts. They also recovered a spear tip from the same time. According to experts, these dated back to 1000 AD. These revelations suggested that the area may have been a pagan worship site. The relic hunters are pros who specialize in river hunting and have amassed millions of followers on social media. They regularly post videos of their baffling discoveries, including that of ancient war relics, coins from centuries ago, and more. They use the latest submersible metal detectors and other equipment to scout the riverbeds for treasures. Well, the axe head may not be an actual treasure, but for archaeologists and historians, it's probably worth more than chests full of gold and silver coins. Creepy dolls. Back in 2014, the people of Prattville and Autauguaville, Alabama, were shocked by a strange and unsettling discovery. The Autauga County Sheriff's Office recovered about 21 dolls from the Bear Creek Swamp near County Road 3. Was it a real-life Annabelle of Chucky situation? Well, not really. Being submerged in water for a while did make these dolls look creepier. All these dolls were mounted on bamboo stakes, but why? Were these toys haunted by evil spirits, or was it just a sinister prank? What's even more unsettling is that the swamp is already pretty famous for being haunted. The locals believe this enormous bog is home to lots of terrifying monsters. They hear strange noises during the night coming from the bog. Most of the dolls were porcelain and appeared to be antique. The Chief Deputy, Joe Settinger, said that he noticed the dolls while driving through the swamp when he was working on a stolen vehicle case. He initially thought it was just a Halloween prank and didn't give it much thought. The land where these were placed was owned by a timber company. They contacted the company but never got a reply, so they decided to take the dolls out. Settinger said they would return the dolls if the owner came forward, but that never happened. The authorities were not able to find out who put these dolls in the swamp and why, but at least they didn't unleash some sort of evil curse on the townsfolk living close to the swamp. Asian carp. These heavy-bodied cyprinid fishes hail from the Asian continent, but they're considered invasive species in the United States. They're thriving in almost all the lakes and rivers across the country. Unbelievable numbers of these fishes can be found swimming in the water bodies. There are 4 major types of the Asian carp that is wreaking havoc in the US waters. These were initially imported by the country and were used in aquaculture farms. The newer invaders include bighead carp, black carp, grass carp, and silver carp. All of these species originated in Asia. These invasive species are particularly causing problems in the Mississippi River and the water bodies surrounding it. This system has acted like a huge freshwater highway with no checks and has therefore provided full access to multiple rivers and streams around the country. These fast-growing fish are incredibly prolific feeders. The native species often fail to compete with them, which results in hazardous imbalances in many freshwater ecosystems. These fish are also a hazard for the boaters in the lakes and rivers. If you end up in a carp-concentrated area, you'll see hundreds of them jumping out of the water. Some might even hit you or knock you out of the boat. So you better be careful if you're planning to take a boat ride in water bodies where these invasive carps rule the aquatic ecosystem. Wild alligator snapping turtle. A team of experts made quite a bizarre discovery in a river in Illinois. They found the first ever wild alligator snapping turtle. No one has seen this turtle in Illinois for a good 30 years. The last time it was sighted was in 1984. The discovery of this snapping turtle has provided biologists with hope, as it is a state endangered species. Some believe the animal probably survived human interference, and the species is now slowly and steadily reviving itself without any intervention. Visually, the alligator snapping turtle looks no less than a prehistoric monster. It can grow up to 2 feet in length and can weigh more than 220 pounds. That kind of density for such a short length is pretty amazing. These turtles can live for more than 70 years in the wilderness. Their jaws are a weapon of defense, however their shell is also covered with spikes. They have scaly tails, and because of their appearance, they're also called the dinosaurs of the turtle world. These exclusive river monsters are found in rivers and other waterways across the United States. There are many stories stating that these turtles are particularly aggressive towards humans, but that's not true. They can, however, easily bite off your finger in just one swift motion thanks to their incredible bite force of 1,000 pounds. The newest snapping turtle was spotted by herpetologist Chris Phillips at the bottom of Clear Creek. He was actually searching for a young male snapping turtle that had a transmitter on its back and had been released into the area in an effort to help the turtle population regrow. Instead, Chris found a different one. This turtle was a female and had been alive for at least 18 years. There was no tracking device on her, which meant the turtles in the area were finally beginning to thrive. Massive catfish. The huge and terrifying goonch catfish looks like something straight out of a nightmare. It's also aptly called the giant devil catfish and the killer catfish by many. This enormous fish is native to the South Asian rivers. Experts believe that the goonch isn't an aggressive species, but record states otherwise. The goonch catfish can easily grow up to 13 feet in length. However, some unverified accounts suggest that goonch catfish measuring up to 20 feet have also been sighted. Their bodies lack scales and their heads are big and flattened. They also possess 3 pairs of barbels. The goonch are carnivorous creatures that voraciously prey on smaller fish, crustaceans, and invertebrates inhabiting the riverbed. But this giant fish is also known for consuming human corpses, provided they come across one. They also don't fear humans and can easily attack one if they wish to. That's probably why they're called man-eating catfish. There have been reports of attacks by these in India. The first one occurred in April 1998 when a 17-year-old man swimming in a river was dragged underwater by a goonch catfish. It all happened in front of his girlfriend and other eyewitnesses. 3 months later, another man lost his little boy in the same river, and sadly his body wasn't found. Who knew a freshwater fish was capable of killing humans? But its horrifying physique and massive size is a red flag urging people to stay away. Voodoo cauldrons. Voodoo may be famous in pop culture around the globe, but this version of the religion of Haitian origin is overly sensationalized. Voodoo is actually a traditional Afro-Haitian religion, but its followers are spread as far as Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Brazil, USA, and elsewhere. Voodoo has very little to do with the so-called voodoo dolls, zombies, and other forms of black magic shown in the movies. However, this doesn't mean it doesn't have its share of strange sermons and artifacts. In fact, some fishermen recently recovered weird voodoo relics from a river in Detroit. They were fishing for metal objects at the bottom of the river with the help of magnets. Believe it or not, but magnet fishing is a real thing and quite popular too. Just imagine all the treasure you could pull out from a river using high-powered magnets. A father-daughter duo started fishing with group fishing missions. They also shared videos of their finds online, but for them a good catch meant a bicycle or a pocket knife, not a voodoo artifact. It's strange how many cauldrons they found in the river. Is Detroit a hub for voodoo practitioners? The Afro-Caribbean voodoo practice involves multiple cultural elements, personal creeds, and practices. They also include an entire system of folk medical practices. These cauldrons represent their sacred tradition and history. The metal cauldrons were filled with dirt from the riverbed. The biggest cauldron had 2 smaller cauldrons inside it. Well, only a voodoo expert can tell us the purpose of these cauldrons and the objects inside them. Dangerous bamboo bridge. In Cambodia, the wet season begins in the month of May and it lasts for 6 whole months. It comes to an end in early November. The Mekong River tends to rise during the wet season. This results in flooding of the surrounding areas, especially the 2 nearby towns. As soon as the dry season begins, the local residents start building a 3,300-foot-long bamboo bridge. This bridge connects the two towns. Dozens of workers build this bridge by hand every single year. The construction of this bridge utilizes around 50,000 bamboo sticks. The bridge tends to shake and rattle from the weight of the traffic. Even if a pedestrian walks over it, the bridge starts shaking, but it can easily support the weight of multiple bicycles, motorbikes, and sometimes even a single car. The bridge remains in its place during the dry months and attracts thousands of tourists who are excited to cross the thrilling and dangerous bridge themselves. The bridge is dismantled by the locals every April, just before the wet season begins. The workers dismantle the structure and the 50,000 bamboo sticks are stored until the next dry season arrives.